सही बात है। और फिर लड़कियों के पास तो वैसे ही अलग ही जुगाड़ होते हैं, है ना? वो अलग ही लेवल पे होती है। लोग उनसे जुगाड़
Good
के वो मेथड
afternoon.
मांगते, जरा
For
बताना यार यही
today's
हो गया तो
class,
ये क्या
we'll be
करूँ।
studying Unit 2 Kalidasa titled
अरे
Abhijnana
लड़कियां रॉक एंड
Sakuntalam.
रोल होती हैं,
This
कपड़ों के
is a
कितने सारे
play by
सोल्यूशंस होते हैं उनके
Kalidasa.
पास। अच्छा यार ये
In
चीज़ नहीं है,
the
आज मेरी
class
ये
for
सूखी नहीं
today,
है, इसकी जगह
we'll
क्या पहन सकते हैं।
discuss the introduction.
एग्जैक्टली, तो करना ही पड़ता है। कैसे मतलब मेनू लगाइए, हाँ उसी की है।
introduction of the play
बढ़िया
as well as the
है।
playwright that is Kalidas.
हाँ अच्छी बात है। मैं भी सोच रही थी अपनी कॉलर ट्यून चेंज करके, मुझे आती ही नहीं है तो फिर
Can
मैंने
he
किया
grow
ही
in
नहीं।
his
पर बिन्नू कर
For
देगा, मैं
today's
उसको बोली
class,
थी।
we'll be studying Unit 2 Kalidasa titled Abhijanana
नहीं नहीं नहीं, मैं
Sakuntalam.
कॉलर ट्यून
This is a
चेंज
play
करना
by
चाहती हूँ क्योंकि
Kalidasa,
मैं समझे नहीं आ
playwright
पाता।
that
हाँ
is Kalidasa. The
वही ना, वो लगी ही
is
नहीं
as the
है।
capital of powerful
हाँ
kingdoms such as few cities possessed. It was during
अरे
most
ज़्यादा
of its
नाइस, फिर नहीं
history a
लगाना, हटाओ
cultural
करो।
and commercial few of the e-resources as has been cited. Kalidasa, Kalidasa is a great playwright. Is a classical Sanskrit playwright. Is known to be one of the greatest playwright. But his time period
अरे
exactly
रहने
is
दो रहने
not
दो, मत हो
established
एक्साइटेड, सब
as
बुरा हो
such. So
जाएगा।
there are three dates. Scholars have debated around the dates, the time period of Kalidasa.
Let's see, let's hope for the
The
best.
first that has been put forward, the first date that has been put forward is the second century BC, the period of Sunga Empire, which held
हंड्रेड
power
पॉइंट सिक्स नहीं,
roughly
वन जीरो
from
टू पॉइंट
184
सिक्स एफ
BC
एम
to 78 BC over
अरे
most of northern and central India, ruling from Patliputra
पर
to
वो तो मुझे नहीं,
imperial capital modern Patna.
वो तो देख के मुझे
Kalidasa is
वैलिड नहीं
believed
लगा,
to
लेकिन
have been the
वैसे तो
court
एज यूजुअल
poet of
सारे कलास
Agnimitra
बराबर होते
Sunga,
हैं ना।
who
लेट्स
ruled
सी तो
as his
लेट्स,
father's viceroy at Ujjaini, the second western
आप
capital
लोगों को
of
सिर्फ
the
एक ही लड़का
empire.
पसंद
He is
है,
the hero of
आकाशवाणी लड़की पसंद
Kalidasa's first play that is
है।
titled
अरे
a
बस बस रहने
Malvikagni
दो,
Mitram,
हम जा
a
चुके हैं और कुछ
romance
चल
with a
चुके हैं।
historical basis. The
पहले आराम
second
करो।
date that has been put forward with
तो मुझे क्या
regards to
पता है, मैं तो दिल्ली
Kalidasa's
में
time
कहीं घूमी
period
नहीं,
is the
तड़का भी तो
first
बड़ा ही
century
वो है कि
BC
कैसे
in
जाएंगे,
the reign of
इट्स
the
सो फार।
celebrated Vikramaditya
आई
of
जस्ट
story
चेक द
and legend
लोकेशंस एंड इट
who
जस्ट सेज
ruled
दैट
at Ujjaini.
Vanatree.
Ujjaini and is believed to have founded the Vikrama era in
बोल तो रही हूँ
57
कि
BC to
वो मेट्रो में है,
commemorate his
इट्स
victory
टेकिंग
over
वन
the
आवर
Saka
और कुछ अबव
invaders of
मिनट, सो इट्स
Malwa.
सो फार
A
दैट
long
जस्ट
and
चेक हाउ
persistent
द
Indian
रोड इज
tradition
दैट। देखते हैं
associates
मेट्रो से जाएंगे
Kalidasa
फिर।
with this monarch, making him Vikramaditya's court poet. The third date that has
अरे
been
नहीं
put
नहीं नहीं,
forward
बैचमेट्स
is
रहेंगे और वो बहुत दूर दूर से,
from
कोई कोई
4th to
नोएडा से भी
5th
आ जाएगा।
century AD
हाँ
during the
अलग अलग
period
करके
of
एक जगह
Gupta
शुरू होता
Empire
है।
in the reign of Chandragupta II, who assumed the title Vikramaditya or the son of valor after he had completely overthrown the Saka power in Western India. So, with regards to Kalidasa, his time period, what was the time period of the poet?
अरे
When
आई
was he
मैनेज,
born?
आई विल नॉट
When
बोल,
was he
लाइक आई
actually
सेड टू
writing the
हिम।
plays that he
अरे
has
मम्मी
written,
भी
the
नहीं
poems
रहेंगी,
that he
सुबह
has
एकदम
written, the
आंटी।
epic that he has written? These are the three dates that have been debated upon and have been put forward,
अब
have
मैं
been
मेट्रो
given
से
to us
जाऊंगी तो
by
क्या
various
दिक्कत
scholars.
है,
It
मेट्रो
is
से
only
आएंगे।
too obvious that Kalidasa's birthplace
हाँ
is
ठीक
not
है,
known
हाँ
for
क्योंकि मैं
certain.
क्राउड इसलिए नहीं चाहती
Various
कि वो
regions in
हमें
the country
अटेंड
have
करके जाने
laid
लग जाए।
claim to the honor of being
लाइक ओ
the
ओ मम्मी
poet's
फोन पे काम है,
place of
और
birth.
भीड़ नहीं ज़्यादा इकट्ठा करते।
If you just give me a minute.
अरे बहुत बार ट्रैवल कर चुके हैं, लेकिन ऐसा है कि लोग नहीं बदलेंगे ना। वही चीज़ है, लाइक आई हैव ट्रैवल्ड विद द मेट्रो टू, बट यू नो द थिंग इज दैट कि पीपल विल नॉट चेंज, लाइक दे आर जस्ट, यू नो द माइंडसेट ऑफ द
Because
पीपल
in
ऑफ इंडिया
Nirguna,
हु कांट चेंज।
Shiva Lingam usually is seen as a sagun form of bhakti. So
एंड
in
इवन नो, इट्स
Kalidasa's
नॉट
work,
लाइक
we see
दिल्ली,
a
दिल्ली इज
bhakti
द
element
राजस्थान,
of
इट्स नॉट
bhakti
दिल्ली है वैसे,
with a constant reference to time,
नहीं
to
है ना, आई
the
वाज सो स्कैर्ड, आप
cyclical
मुझे एकदम ऐसे करके देख के
idea
आए
of
ना,
time,
तो मुझे लगा
to
कौन
the
है।
to the cosmic
बताओ ऐसे,
cosmic
नॉट क्या, अरे एक आंटी मेरे एकदम
with the
एकदम
cosmic
मेरे पास में आई
uh,
ना, मुझे ऐसे एकदम
path that's
मैंने ऐसे देखा
associated
ना तो आई वाज लाइक स्कैर्ड, मैंने
with
देखा ही
the
नहीं था उसको।
events that are happening. So we'll
हाँ
look at it further. We'll deal with it in details as we'll study the play. So
चलो
basically,
कर
in
लो,
his works, as we
गो
are
अहेड
discussing right now,
एंजॉय।
is Ujjaini. That is the splendor of which, the beauty
Yeah,
of which,
thank you
is
so
constantly referred
much,
to
bye
in his
bye।
work. So Ujjaini's
हाँ
splendor
लेट्स सी,
and
फर्स्टली
opulence
आई
are
जस्ट गो
reflected in
देयर ना, द थिंग
Kalidasa's
इज दैट ओनली।
writings. Its mansions and
या
groves, its palaces and pleasure
ध्यान रखिए,
gardens
बाय।
are described in vivid detail in the two poems in the volume. The glowing description of the palaces and garden in the dream
नमस्ते
city of
आंटी।
Alaka in Meghadutam, as well as those of King Dushanta in Sakuntala, who is a monarch of the mythic past, might have been drawn from
सच्ची
those that made Ujjaini
अरे
splendid
हो
and
जाती है
beautiful in the
बहुत बार
poet's
सुनी
own
हुई,
time.
एक बार
But
दो
it is
नहीं
also
बहुत बार
likely that the
सुनी है,
poet
सुनी हूँ
was
यहाँ से
drawing
लेके
on
उस
his
कमरे
literary
तक।
reminiscences of
अच्छा
the
ऐसा
epics,
मैं
some
मॉर्फिंग
of
कर
the
रही थी, कुछ
details
चला
of his
रही थी।
description. Example,
कौन
the
सी?
yakshas
हाँ
mentioned in
कमरे पे एक दिन
Meghadutam
तो मैं
and
सो
gardens
गई
in
थी।
Alaka and
अच्छा
the Vindhyan
मॉर्फिंग लड़के से
landscape
बात कर
in
रही थी।
Ritu
हाँ
Samharam
यही तो।
are self-consciously elusive, but with the jewel
अच्छा वहाँ मामे
perfection
वाले घर
that
पे।
is all the poet's own. So
हाँ
illusion
कर
means
कर लेते
referring
हैं
to something
स्पीकर पे।
indirectly. So there is a constant
खोलेंगे
reference
तो
of
फिर आएगा
Ujjaini in
नहीं।
his works indirectly.
कभी हमारे
However,
कॉलेज में तो ऐसे ही
Kalidasa
डिस्प्ले पे लगा
celebrates
देते
the
हैं।
glory of Ujjaini not only for its beauty and wealth, but also because it is a place
अरे
of
कौन सा वाला
hero
स्पीकर है
fanning.
तुम्हारा?
It is one of the 12 hero
यही
fanning
है दूसरा
spots in
वाला
the
कौन
country.
सा?
It is, hero fanning is understanding uh, basically understanding the philosophical part of being, the philosophical that is in interrelated to the religious, to the beliefs, to the belief. So that is basically what hierophanic means. So Ujjaini is also considered to be 12 hierophanic spots in the country
हाँ
where
देखो।
Shiva, the absolute, descended into time and space to abide as a terrestrial presence for the salvation of the godly. Such a city, wealthy and cosmopolitan, possessing a rich culture and a cultivated audience belonging to a leisured class, and with a splendid court and
चलो फिर रहने दो है ना। अरे इधर
merchant
तो हो
guilds to
चुकी है।
provide patronage for the
अरे
arts,
इधर
would
दूसरा भी
have
मिल
been the
जाता।
ideal center for the flowering of
नहीं
dramas. Legends speak of the brilliant court of King Vikramaditya, learned, wise, and generous, patron of poets and scholars. Some of the great dramas are laid in Ujjaini, others build their plots around the life of the beautiful princess Vasvadatta of
कर क्या
Ujjaini,
गेट किया?
daughter of the
वॉलेंटियरिंग।
ruler of Avanti in the time of
सही
Buddha.
बता। हाँ
Kalidasa's
क्या?
status as the
क्या
major
वहाँ
poet and
होगा?
dramatist in
बात करने जाएंगे
Sanskrit
ऐसे।
literature is
रेडियो पे बोलते हैं ना
unquestioned.
हाँ।
So it is being quoted. Once,
जैसे रेडियो
when
पर किसी
poets
को
were
भी काट
counted,
दिया।
Kalidasa occupied the
अरे हमको
little
इसी में था
finger.
ना।
The ring
इस चल
finger
रहा है
remains
आज़ादी का
unnamed
अमृत
to
महोत्सव।
its name,
75
for
होगी
his
आज़ादी की,
second
उसके ऊपर
has not
बोलेंगे
been
हम।
found.
अच्छा
That
बोलो
is
फिर।
high praise. Kalidasa's
हो गया।
accomplishment is
हाँ कर रही है,
distinguished
प्रैक्टिस तो
not
कर रही
only
थी।
by the excellence of the individual
कर ही लिया
works,
देख।
but by the many sided talents which the whole achievement displays. He is a dramatist, a writer of epic, and a
बस
lyric
कल
poet
तक
of
छुट्टी कर लो, कल से
extraordinary
पढ़ना लग
scope.
जाना
In
इंग्लिश।
his hands, the language attained a remarkable flexibility, becoming an instrument
सही।
capable of sounding many
अभी तो मैं तैयारी करके
moods
फिर
and
मैनेजमेंट के लिए
nuances of
जाऊंगी और
feelings.
पढ़ना।
A language that is limpid and flowing, musical, uncluttered by the verbal virtuosities indulged in by many writers who followed him, yet remaining a language
क्या होता है, जो
loaded in
सामने वाला
every
आपको
rift with
अच्छा
the
बात
rich
करने
ores
वाला
of the
मिल जाता है ना,
literary
तो फिर
and
देन यू
mythical
जस्ट बिंदास अच्छे
elusiveness
से बात कर
of his
सकते हो।
cultural heritage. By wielding different elements to create new genre, his importance as an innovator in the history of Sanskrit literature is clearly established. The brilliant medieval lyric poet
हिंदी की तो ऐसे
Jayadeva,
ही हम
in
धीरे धीरे
praising
बोलते हैं ना
Kalidasa
सीखते
as
सीखते।
Kavi Kula Guru, master of
हिंदी को तो हम
poets,
ऐसे ही धीरे धीरे
conveys
बोलते
his
सीखते हैं लोगों
recognition
से।
of the aspect of the poet's greatness. Bana, the celebrated author of the prose romance Kadambari, exclaimed, "Who is not delighted when Kalidasa's perfect verses spring forth in their sweetness like honey-filled clusters of the flower?" So previously we looked at the time of Kalidasa, then the place, his the place that he has spent most of his life in, and the place that he has also
गुड आफ्टरनून
referred
मैम।
to in many of his works indirectly.
आई एम
And
फाइन, हाउ अबाउट यू?
So you'll see that place, the place that was an important center of important center economically, was also an important center culturally. I'm talking about Ujjaini. So also along with this, Kalidasa as a poet, as a classical poet, as a classical dramatist, is considered one of the most important Sanskrit the scholar who has written in Sanskrit language. Though he, when we talk about
मेरे
his
को खाने का
language,
अभी
the
खाने की आ
high
रही हो
praise is not just about his work, but it is also about how he brought to language a entirely new way of used language for an entirely new way of expressing the feelings in his poetry. So his language also, we'll see, is not just using the Sanskrit that is limited to the males or the high caste, but is also a high caste upper class, but is also using Prakrit. And the use of Prakrit in itself, uh, for his work, is extremely uh, new, and is also making his work more accessible to a large number of audience. So a lot of poets, a lot of poets like Jayadeva, then later on Bana, they have celebrated, they have uh, praised Kalidasa for being a poetic genius, for being a genius, a literary genius, and thus drawing attention to his exquisite craftsmanship of the poet's verse. For nearly 2 millennia, Kalidasa's work have been read with deep appreciation, widely commented upon, and lavishly praised. It would be safe to assume that the poet enjoyed success, fame, and affluence during his lifetime. We sense no hint of dissatisfaction in his work, no sign of bitterness at not receiving due recognition. Yet we do not possess any information about him, his life, and the times in which the life unfolded and fulfilled itself. All we are left with are few legends. The poet has drawn a veil of silence around him, so complete that even his real name is unknown to people, to the generation that came after him. So this is all an assumption that he was born in Ujjaini. The three the proposed time period, that too is, it could be 2nd century BC, the time of Sunga Empire. It could be 1st century BC when Vikramaditya reigned. It could be 4th and 5th centuries AD, during the period of Gupta Empire when Chandragupta reigned. um, this is debated upon because his works, though he is considered one of the greatest dramatists, greatest poets, major poets, dramatists in classical Sanskrit literature, yet what we know about him, the information about his life, about his time, uh, all of it is just has been researched upon and has a definite answer to, okay, this is the time period that Kalidasa belonged to, could not be said. He cannot be placed in this is the only definite time period that he was born in. This was the situation during his time. Kalidasa, um, the name in itself. Now we'll discuss the name of the poet in itself. We know that the name of the dramatist, whose work we are going to read today, is Kalidasa. So his name means the servant of Kali. Kali Dasa. It means, the name signifies him being a servant of Kali. Kali is time in the feminine. Kala is time. The concept of time as a creative principle is as old as Vedas. We can then translate the name Kalidasa as the servant of time, a phrase that prompts us to explore its significance. Kala and Mahakala are among the many names given to Shiva, the absolute. The many names given to Godhead are descriptive of its different aspects and functions as seen in the world of phenomena and apprehended by human consciousness. Formless, eternal, one. Shiva is pure consciousness, the changeless reality behind the manifold changing world that is brought into being by his inherent power or Shakti, that
पहले
is cosmic
स्टार्ट
energy.
हाँ लोक
Kali is one of the many names of Shakti. The names
काली है
descriptive
सात
of the
आठ और
creative power are the feminine forms of the words pertaining to the names
सिनेमन
descriptive of the
है ना
creative, pertaining to the many
और
aspects of the
अच्छे
function
से कड़क
of the
मत
unitive
कीजिएगा
Godhead.
जरा सा नींबू
Sivani,
जस्ट
Bhavani,
टेस्ट इट और
Kali.
उसमें मीठे के लिए 2 चम्मच शहद अदरवाइज नहीं है तो जस्ट गो विद द गुड़ है ना या
Mahakali,
you will
derived from
just
Shiva,
say Nidhi it's
Bhava,
so
Kala,
wow
and
and you
Mahakala
just go
define the
find
feminine, that
but
is the
it's
creative
my
aspect of
it's
the
of
one,
my
in
course
form
अभी अभी हाँ
Shiva, Bhava, Kala, and Mahakala. In
हम खुद की
iconography,
शांति
this
कर सकते हैं अगर
concept
आपके
is
पास गुड़ रखा
imagined
है देन गो
as
फॉर गुड़ क्या करना है आपको एक
Aradhna
ग्लास
Risvara,
पानी
the
लेना है
Lord
उसको
whose
डालना है
one
उसको
half is
खौलाना
woman.
है उसके बाद उसमें
Shiva and Sakti are
मतलब
therefore
सात आठ
one
दाने चाय
indivisible
पत्ती के मतलब
whole.
आपको एकदम
The
काला नहीं करना है
natural
उसको एकदम
consequence of
येलो
the
येलो सा
poet's
रखना है लाइक
reticence
जैसे
is
फ्लेमिंगो
that a
होती है
number of legends have
उसके
gathered
बाद
around
हाँ
his name. One of them presents him as a simple,
हाँ जी
unlettered Brahmin youth of uncommon beauty and grace
हाँ
of
लेमन
manner,
पुदीना
who
नहीं
was
उसको
orphaned at
लेमन
6 months and
लेमन
brought up by the driver of an
थोड़ी
ox
सी
cart.
गले पे
Though
एक
devout
नैपकिन ले
prayer
उसको
and
नीचे
worship of the
करके
goddess Kali, he obtained
फेंक दो
profound
उधर और
learning
हमने भी ले
and the
लिया
gift of poetry and is said to have assumed the name of Kalidasa, the servant of time. So, even around his names, there have been a lot of research. His name, which is in one way representing the servant of time, is also denoting the idea of Shiva and Shakti brought together as a whole, where we see Shiva is being is being understood as the human consciousness, and and Shakti as the feminine aspect of it, the creative aspect of it, the creation and the cosmic coming together, and also another legend around his name, around
मम्मी कहाँ घर पे मम्मी कहाँ पे घर पे चाय बनाते 4 बजे के करीब जाएंगे दुकान पे
his birth is this, that he was a simple unlettered Brahmin youth who was orphaned at the age of 6 months and brought up by a driver of an ox cart. Though through a
नहीं पहले
devout
वो
prayer and
पहले
worship of
मैरिनेट
goddess
कर दो
Kali, he
देन
obtained
गो फॉर द
profound
चाय
learning
शाम
and
के
gift of
लिए है ना
poetry. So hence his name can mean the
और बनाने के
servant
बाद
of
उसको
time or
फेंक
the
दिया जाए
servant of
ताकि ना
creative
समझे कि
power.
आपने हो गया
To
काम
look at the first of possibilities, Vak, the
चाहिए
Sakti
मुझे
or the
सबूत के
inherent
साथ
power
चाहिए
of the supreme spirit in the Vedas, speak through the poet who has constituted
टीचर्स भी तो हमारे
himself
साथ
as
ऐसे
a
ही क्या
medium.
करते हैं ना कि मुझको
And
एक
in
जरा
so
व्हाट्सएप
doing,
करना तो मेरा
Kalidasa
काम जो
places
मेरा पूरा
himself in
क्लियर
the
हो गया
ancient
मेरा
tradition of the Vedic poet seers who saw themselves as
थोड़ी देर
speaking
के
the
लिए टीचर
word
के लिए
and
नीचे
uttering the
मिल जाना
truth.
चाहिए
Looking deep within into the depths of their consciousness, they
खिला
saw the
तीन
light
बजे
that
तक
never
जाओ और
was
वही
on the sea
बनाओ
or
जो तब
land
तक
and
आपको मैं
expressed the
चुकी हूँ तो
vision
मैं 2 3
they
बजे तक
discovered
आपको
there
काम करके
for
नीचे
all
लाती
ages to come.
हूँ
The word reveals the unseen through the seen, using the
मैंने
language
बताया
of
आपने
metaphor and
इसके
links
होंगे बहुत सारे
the
कार्ड
transcendent
क्योंकि जो
with the
मैंने बताया वो
transient.
स्वीट सा कार्ड है
The poet Kavi, from which the word kavya
अरे
or
अदरक
poetry is
तो
derived,
समझो दोस्त है
establishes
दोस्त
communion between the
जब
two
मन करे खा
worlds,
लो एक बार
between men and gods. The second possibility is particularly
चाय
useful
नहीं
in
बनता है ऐसे
interpretation
अगर
of
ऐसे कहीं घूमना है
Kalidasa's
तो
play
जस्ट
by
कॉल मी अप
enabling the
अदरवाइज
reader
यू नो
to
टेक्स्ट मी
adopt
व्हेन आई
readings other
सेंड
than
यू द
or in
मैसेज
addition to the uh, strictly historical one
क्या
that places them in the
आई वांट टू
framework of
टेक
the
आउट योर
poet's
काढ़ा
milieu and the poetics that were current in his
काढ़ा
age.
गो
There
फॉर
is
काढ़ा
more in a
यार
great work of art
इफ यू आर
than
गो
can be
टी ना देन यू
compassed in
कैन
one
नॉट
single mode of
इट्स नॉट
interpretation
दिल्ली सिटी
that sets out to explore its significance. So, to understand his work as in one way,
रहने दो तुम नहीं मानने
where
वाले
he
बच्चे
is
बहुत बेकार हो
speaking
तुम
as the creative part. Second, he is,
तुम्हारे मार्क्स काटे
the second
जाएंगे
possibility also is this, that Kalidasa places himself in the ancient
अरे मत
tradition of
क्यों
Vedic
या फिर
poet
उसमें खूब
seers,
सारी अदरक डाल दो
where
है ना और उसमें दूध
what
मत
he is
डालना
writing is speaking, is a medium, is a vessel. He becomes a vessel
क्या क्या क्या
where he is uttering the truth. So
लेकिन
uttering
दूध
the
मत
truth
डालो
in
दूध
in this way that he's
अरे
looking at the
यार ये
depths of
विलायती लोग क्या
consciousness
करेंगे
and he's
बेचारे ना एकदम से ऐसे
expressing
चले गए
the discovered unseen through the language that is helping bridge a
नशा है
gap
एक मेरे घर
between
में भी
what
है
is
क्या
seen and
आपको
what
भी
is
धर्मेंद्र सर
unseen.
ने क्या चाय लगवाई बेकार किया सब कुछ
So Kalidasa's, let us look at Kalidasa's
मेरी तो
literary
बचपन से ही,
works.
मेरे तो
So
बचपन से
the
ही याद
poet
था क्या
has
है, ऐसे
left
बोल रही हूँ,
us
है ना?
with seven works, three long lyrical poems that are
अरे
Ritush
ऐसा
Samharam, The Gathering of the Seasons.
छोड़
The
देनी
second
चाहिए
poem
शायद
is
इसको,
Kumar Sambhavam,
बेकार
The
है।
Birth of Kumara. The third is Meghadutam, The Cloud Messenger.
देखो मैं सब
Three
खिलाऊंगी
plays,
क्योंकि मैं नहीं पीती।
Malvika Agni Mitram, Malvika and Agni Mitra. Second is
बच्चे से कुछ नहीं होता,
Vikramavo
मेरी छोटी बहन दबा के पीती है,
Murvasyam,
वो मेरे से छोटी
Urvasi
बच्ची
won
है।
by valor. The third is Abhijnanasakuntalam, the
ठीक है,
recognition of
बाय।
Sakuntala, and an incomplete epic that is Raghu Vamsam, Raghu's dynasty. So Shakuntala's narrative is described at length in the epic
डांटना
Mahabharata
पड़ता है
under
कभी
the
कभी कि जाएगी नहीं
section
बाहर।
Sakuntalo Pakhyana
बोला तो मैं
from
खुदा
the
आपके
Adi
वीडियो के
Parva.
बाद
So we
करूँ।
know that Mahabharata is
बोल रही है मैं
divided
दूध
into
की चाय
18
पी के जा रही,
parvas.
मैंने कहा
The
कोई खाना
first
दे दो,
is the Adi Parva.
बन
So
ना जाएगा
this
फिर, और
story is,
वही है, थोड़ा सा
you know,
काढ़ा पी लूँ तो और सही रहेगा।
Kalidasa
नहीं मुझे नहीं पीना
draws from
काढ़ा,
the story
कड़वा
of
लगता है।
Mahabharata
मैंने कहा अच्छा,
and
बस सोडा खा
narrates
जाओ
it
भी सही हो
um,
जाएगा। देखना
as a play. As a
और
play,
क्या,
Abhijanana Sakuntalam. That is the recognition of Sakuntala.
वैसे भी इतना वो सब
So,
बढ़ रहे हैं, ओमिक्रॉन
Shakuntala is
वगैरह।
described at length in epic Mahabharata. It is recounted as one
मेरे
among
पास
the
ज़्यादा
many
नहीं है, तुझे
ancestral
चाहिए तो
legends of the
बात
Puru
करेंगे।
lineage by Vesampayana. To Janmajaya on the occasion of a sacrificial ritual. His
तो
narrative
मैम
is
कह रही हाँ
focused on
हाँ, आज तुम्हारी
discovering
बारी
who the
डांट लो।
Bharatas were. The answer is they were descendants
मैंने
of
कहा आती
Bharata,
कहती है ना,
born of
काम भेजना
Sakuntala
कॉपी का।
and Dushanta. The focus of the narrative is on Dushanta, and the significance of Shakuntala is limited to her son, who would be the prospective heir to the Dushanta's throne. In the epic, Dushanta is so the
हाँ,
story that is there in Mahabharata is like this: that there is a king named Dushanta. He is a triumphant king. He is considered to be an equal of the lord of gods, that is Indra.
देखना सही है।
The story in the epic goes as follows. King Dushanta was pursuing a deer, and he enters a forest. And
फिर क्या?
as soon as he enters the forest pursuing that deer, he chances upon a holy hermitage that appears to him as Indra's paradise. That is how beautiful that hermitage is. Drawn to it, he reaches the sanctum of the ascetic Kanava to pay his respects. But there, instead of Kanava, he finds his adopted daughter Shakuntala. Dushyanta is immediately smitten by the beauty of the maiden. He then asks her about her
क्यों
parentage.
सोचा है, ऐसा
So
गलत
when
काम
he
क्यों
asks
सोचा है?
Shakuntala
क्या
who
वो क्यों
she is,
पहनना है?
who are her
बता।
parents, Shakuntala says that I have heard the story from Kanava. That she recites to him the same story that she has heard from
अरे यार एंटी
Kanava,
प्लीज बनो,
the
लेकिन इतना एंटी बनने की जरूरत
ascetic
नहीं है,
who
गाइस।
has adopted Shakuntala, that she is the daughter of an Apsara. The name of the Apsara is Menaka, and the austere ascetic Vishwamitra. On birth, Menaka abandoned Shakuntala and went back to the realm of gods, to Indra. Shakuntala, according to her own narrative, is then found by Saint Kannava. Having heard her tale, King Dushyanta reaffirms that Shakuntala couldn't have been an ordinary maiden, because that is how beautiful she is. So, having heard her, he coaxes her to enter into a Gandharva marriage with him, a marriage done in secret with rituals between a loving man and a loving woman. Shakuntala agrees on one condition, that if the king promises that her son that is born out of this conjugal uh, this relationship between Shakuntala and Dushyanta would become the king after him, she would marry Dushyanta. So king agrees to this, and both of them
एक नहीं
consummate their
खाता उसका
marriage.
वजन बढ़ा देगा।
Thereafter, the king returns to the court. Shakuntala in the following year gives birth to a son at Saint Kanava's hermitage. The the son is described to be radiant, is described to be extremely
बने नहीं हुआ
brave,
तो अभी।
is described to be having superhuman strength. So Kanava decides to send the son
मैं आज तो
to the
दूसरी कोई
king's
पसंद के बारे
palace
में
with
रखो, वो कितनी
Shakuntala.
बार करती
As
है।
soon as
कितने बार
Shakuntala
करती
reaches
है।
Dushanta's palace and is
आप
brought in front of him,
रोज सुबह नहीं आती
Dushanta
हो, इसलिए
refuses to
आपको ऐसा है।
acknowledge Shakuntala.
कभी
So
दोपहर को नहीं
Shakuntala
आती,
is
कुछ नहीं मारती है, जिस दिन ये
not
सर्दी
only he
ठंडी है।
refuses to acknowledge Shakuntala, but he also
जैसे
uh,
अभी यहाँ कोट
uh, you know
वीडियो ही बंद कर दो
in the
एक
front of the whole
पहले ही
court
कर।
says that she is somebody who is just making up things. So Dushyanta, Shakuntala, having faced this humiliation, leaves the court and leaves the court, and then there is a celestial warning that is heard by Dushyanta as soon as Shakuntala leaves the palace. So Dushyanta, as soon as he hears that celestial voice that warns him that what he has done with Shakuntala is wrong, goes after her and says that, you know, I myself knew very well that the son that the boy that you had brought to my court is my son, but if I had taken him as my son, on the words alone, suspicion would have been rife among the people and he would have never been cleared of it. Therefore, Dushyanta suggests that he has to play the fraudulent game of rebuking her. With this, Dushyanta accepts his son and Shakuntala and brings them both to the court, declaring the young boy as the future king. Now, this was the story from which Kalidasa has given to us, from which drawing from which Kalidasa has written the play Abhijnanasakuntalam, that is the recognition of Shakuntala. But this play we know is by a classical Sanskrit playwright, and as a result, it also follows certain conventions. um, so, dramatic art in ancient India held an appeal as no other art form did. Recitations of folk tales and epics gradually came to include enactments. The form of drama in Sanskrit literature particularly included aspects of dance, music, and acting. It was performative in an inclusive sense as it freely used gestures, it used mimes and dancing postures. Dance and drama during the ancient period, during the classical Sanskrit period, were not viewed as distinct or separate. Instead, dance and drama went hand in hand. So the Natya Shastra, the treatise on drama of Bharata, the oldest surviving text of the theory of drama and dramatics, claims a divine origin for itself. It styles itself as a fifth Veda, accessible to all, including those who were precluded from the study of the four Vedas. Vedas, like women and people who were who were excluded from the study of Veda. Bharata says that Natya Shastra is to be considered the fifth Veda. Uh, People who were excluded from studying the Vedas were women and Sudras, and sets out the he sets out that he would be instructing, he would be theorizing regarding the drama, the dramatics, the art of drama through pleasure. So Brahma, the creator, took elements out of the existing four Vedas to create this new fifth Veda known as Natya Veda, Natya Shastra. Among its aims, as set out in the first chapter, are to represent the ways of the world, both good and bad, to give good advice and provide enlightenment through entertainment, to bring peace of mind to those afflicted with the ills of the world and its many problems. Drama represents a generalized view of the world and the actions of persons divested of particularities of character. So, what does Natya Shastra say about the drama? It says that, you know, the purpose of the drama is going to be that it is going to represent the world, both good and bad. It is going to be an advice on how what is good, what is bad. It is going to be a good advice. It would provide education, it would provide enlightenment regarding what is moral, what is immoral, through the form of entertainment. And this is what is meant by pleasure, to bring. And the third is to bring peace of mind to people who are uh, you know uh, who are troubled by the ills of the world. So, drama represents a generalized view of the world and the actions of persons divested of particularities of character. It does not deal with individuals and their specific situations and emotions. The chief goal of drama is to produce ras, uh, the aesthetic emotion evoked by the appropriate mood built cumulatively through not only words but also by miming and gestures, music and dance, costume and jewelry, Rasa is not raw emotion, but emotion depersonalized. Divested of all the accidents of circumstances, it is emotion represented, distilled by art. Sanskrit drama is therefore a blend of many elements: verse and prose, dance, music, and spectacle. The Natya Shastra treats poetry, music, and dance as one art. The word nata, that means actor, natya, which means dancing dramatic art, and nataka, all derived from one root, nat, to act or represent. The Natya Shastra is obviously either a compilation of texts that existed prior to it in one form or another, or a systematic arrangement and organization of a body of floating theories and practices. In its present form, it might well be later than Kalidasa, depending on which century we choose to place the poet in. It is possible that the author of Natya Shastra sat down to compose his treatise with Kalidasa's plays as reference. That a creative writer of Kalidasa's genius and accomplishment would write according to the
और थोड़ा
book
आप भी
is
जाती
not
हूँ तो
very
साथ में
likely.
जाने जाती
It
है नहीं
seems more plausible than a critic and theorist would draw upon the work of a great writer to formulate his theories. Though we might be grappling with uncertainties because there is no concrete evidence to draw a clear line of descent from one to the other, the origins of drama could be traced back to the Vedas. So, we are looking at the purpose of drama according to the purpose of drama as has
बच्चे
been
तो ये
given to
बच्चे और
us in
जानवर
Natya
एक जैसे ही होते
Shastra,
हैं कुछ भी
and
कह दो
Natya Shastra studies is studying the the drama in its performance, in its in its
अपनी
language,
नानी के भी
uh,
ले
the ancient the dramas during the ancient time. So as has been also pointed out, it is possible that Natya Shastra might have also referred to the work of
और अब
Kalidasa
चलवा रही थी चल बेटा
as
आजा
one point
घर
of
की सड़क है
reference when
तो
talking
उसमें क्या
about
है वो तो
what is the
शुगर फ्री
purpose
वाली
of
मूर्ति
drama,
दिखा रखा है
what
तो
is
तुम्हारे हाथ में
emotions,
बैठा
what
ये मुंह
emotions are
तुम्हारे
the
हाँ
chief goals of
तुम्हारे हाथ
drama,
में बैठा
right? So the
हाँ
Vedic hymns were chanted and sung by several voices, and the presence of refrain in some suggests a choral element.
आपने उस दिन
The
छोड़ी थी
ritual
ना मैं तो डरी
themselves
गई
of the
मैं
great sacrifices, and there were many of them extending over days
दीदी
and
की
even
चिड़िया है
longer
बहुत प्यारी
periods,
सी
have a dramatic character
पर वो दूर
because
से
the
ही अच्छी लगती
complex
है जब वो
round of
पिंजरे में होती है
that it is going to
अरे पता
bind
मुझे हरी चीज
the coming events with with the
अपनी
idea
नानी
of
कितने काटते हैं
time
नानी के भी कितने काटते हैं
that is governed by cosmic energy. So even the play we are going to read, Abhijnanasakuntalam, that is the recognition of Shakuntala, starts
वो
with this,
सॉफ्ट होती है
that
वो उसको फेंक
the Dushyanta, after having performed the yajna, has gone to the forest, right? The chariot race is
मजाक कली करा रहे थे आप
mentioned, as well as a contest between a fair Vaisya and a dark Sudra for the possession of a round white skin symbolizing the sun. These imply a certain amount of action that have accompanied the chanting of the sacred verses and the performance of the rituals. A notion of conflict or contest is also implied, an essential element in drama. It is
अपनी जैसे
suggested
खाते
that the Urvasi Puravas poems was a staged dialogue, a dramatic substitute for what had originally been the sacrifice of a male in a fertility rite after a sacred ritual and that the theme of separated lover derives from it. But it seems that
और
a
उन्हें सिखाया जाता
theme
तब
of
बोलते हैं
separation and reunion of lovers also belongs to the folk and fairy tale. However, the first part of the suggestion points to the possibility that the
मतलब वो
vegetation and
पिक्चर
the
वाला तो होता
fertility
है
cults
ऐसा
of the
मकाऊ
ancient
मकाऊ
world
मकाऊ
are
अच्छा होता
among the
है नीला
contributing
लाल
factors
पीला
in the
और
evolution
टूटी
of
फूटी हर
classical
कलर होता है
drama. It is interesting to note in this connection that the
वो बहुत
medieval and
अच्छा होता
modern
है वाइट
religious
पैरेट भी होता
drama
है
relating to
हाँ वाइट भी होता है
Krishna's nativity and
मकाऊ बहुत अच्छा
exploits,
लगता है मकाऊ
culminating in the
बहुत
slaying of
अच्छा
the
है
cruel
उसमें दिखाते
uh,
हैं डैडी मतलब
Kamsa by
इतना
Krishna,
सुंदर सुंदर
displays
तो
a ritual
देखा ही
aspect
नहीं हाँ
that connects it to the ancient vegetation
अभी
cults.
बनाती हूँ
The binding
देखो
of
दीपक
Bali
सुनने के बाद
and
ऐसा लगता है कितना सुंदर लगता है
Kansha's
ये सुन
killing,
ये महंगा भी
slaying
आता है
are
थोड़ा
two
बहुत
plays referred to
अरे
in the
बहुत
literature of the
सुंदर, इतना
2nd
मतलब
century
देखते रह
BC.
जाओ
It
कलर
appears
इसकी
that in the staging of these early religious
हाँ
plays,
ये
the
मिलता नहीं
colors
है
black and
रियल में
red have
ये
been used
देखो आँख
symbolically
देखो
in the
कितना
makeup of
सुंदर है
actors
ये
to
अलेक्जेंडरी
represent
पैरट है,
dark
लेकिन इनमें
winter
भी बहुत
and
सारी
bright
प्रजाति
summer.
नहीं होती
हाँ
अलग अलग
हाँ
डिफरेंट
The
वो है।
mudras
अब
or
ये देखो
hand
इस पर इसके
gestures
सिर्फ पंख ऐसे हैं
used
और ये
and the
ऐसा है लेकिन मुझे
stances
जो पसंद है वो
adopted
ये
during the
वाले कलर का
performance of Vedic
हाँ
rituals
कलरफुल वाला
were
ये अलेक्जेंडर
incorporated
पैरट
later in
होता है।
classical
अच्छा
drama.
लगता है ये
Often
वाइट
the
है
stage
ये
direction
मुझे ये
in a
अच्छा
play
लगता है
indicate miming
इसकी
and
जोड़ी
call
जो
for a
है
लेकिन
specific
ये
mudra.
यहाँ नहीं मिलता।
As for
ये यहाँ
instance
मिलते हैं
in a sak, the Kapakota Hastaka, the dove-shaped
और दीदी
hand
मेरा वो भी
gesture, the
बहुत अच्छा लगता
dove-shaped
है
hand
ऑयल
gesture that
हाँ
conveys
वो
अच्छी
दूसरा
adoration
वाला।
or supplication,
थैंक
where the hands are folded together with the
मछलियाँ
palms
मर जाती है,
slightly
बदबू
followed
आती है वो जो
and
ये
not
फिर
touching
वो
but with the
मैंने
tips
आज
of
ही
the
का
finger
सुबह था ना
and the
बाहर से
base
ही
touching
अपने
so
में
as
ही
to
लगता
form
था
the shape
हाँ
of a
मछलियाँ
dove.
बहुत ज्यादा
However, mudras
आज
and
आज
stances
ही
are
मैंने
not
देखा
only
ना
part of the ceremonies
आज
accompanying
ही का नहीं था
Vedic
दूर से
liturgy but
आज ही
also
का
of
देखा था
priestly
ना इतनी
rituals in
बदबू आ रही
temples.
थी
For
उनका
instance,
पानी
the
बदलना
waving of
पड़ता
light
बहुत
before the
बहुत
deity
मेहनत है
goes
उसमें
through an intricate
पानी का
sequence of
मतलब वो
movements.
इनका खाने
They
का
also belong to
खाने
the
का
grammar
उनका
and
हिस्सा
vocabulary of the dance,
मरने
which
की
is
चीज
closely associated with
बहुत
temple
ज्यादा
worship
बदबू आती
and
है
with Shiva, who
ऐसे
is
मछलियाँ मर
imagined in
जाते तो
stone and
इतनी
metal
बू
as
आती है
Nataraja, the lord of
बच नहीं
dance.
सकती है
The Natya Shastra
बेचारी मरेगी
assumes
तो
the
बदबू
close
नहीं करेगी
association of Shiva with the
आज ही
performing
मैंने
arts.
देखा
For
अरे
Bharata, in
इंसान
his
मरता तो वो
dialogue
भी
with
बदबू से
Brahma, the
निकल
creator,
जाएगा
speaks of having
और क्या
witnessed the dance
जानवर
of
भी
Shiva,
मरते थे ना
Neelakantha, the blue throated god, full of feeling and expressive of the sentiments of Shringara, love, conveyed through graceful sequences of movement and gesture. And Shiva, highly pleased with the performance of the two plays, the churning of the ocean and the burning of the triple city, the later play is mentioned in Meghadutam, composed by Brahma himself and performed by Bharata and his troop on the Himalayas against the natural scenery of its beautiful caves and waterfalls. Instruct his disciple Tandu to teach Bharata certain dance sequences that formed part of the preliminaries in the staging of a play. This statement in the Natya Shastra suggests the coming together of two tradition in the performing arts or the influence of one upon the other. What are we looking at? We are looking at the drama during the ancient time, the drama and its performance as is there in Abhijnanasakuntalam. So it was influenced, as the last statement states, that both of them were the rituals and its performance and the drama and its performance were influenced by each other. The traditions and the performing arts had influenced each other. uh, also it is pointed out that how the drama during ancient India, of the ancient India, of the Sanskritic drama especially, are a combination of both the mudras, the dance steps. It is not just that, but it is also along with it, looking at the body that is that's
अरे
performing
भैया
it.
वो जॉब
Um,
लगवाने का
uh, uh, the preliminaries consist of a series of religious ceremonies with prayers and offerings of flowers to the deities, performed with specific gestures and sequences of movements to the accompaniment of music. So, music, dance, as well as the sequence, all of this. So it serves a dual purpose, framing drama in a religious setting and providing the audience with some entertainment. Sanskrit drama is secular, but there is a religious and ritual dimension to it. The association of Shiva, which also provides the quality of prayer to what is basically secular drama, as evidenced by the invocation at the beginning and benediction of Bharata Vakya, the stanza spoken by the actor at the end of the play. Natya Shastra is a treatise on dramatic art that attempts to outline the aim, purpose, and role of drama
आपको
in
उत्तम नगर जाना पड़ेगा पिटर नंबर 680 में हाँ तो उत्तम नगर के साइड में जो भी होते हैं ना वो सब पैसे
ancient
देते
India.
हैं
What is the aim? What is the
हाँ
purpose? What is the role of
तो
drama?
वही तो
It
कह रही हूँ ना
includes specific features and elements considered integral to Sanskrit drama. Natya carries the root word nat, which means to act. It may be applied to both drama and dance, as Natya is also the word for art that has survived for centuries. Bharata termed it the fifth Veda. He has claimed I shall make a fifth Veda on the Natya with the semi historical tales, Itihasa, which will conduce to duty, dharma, wealth, artha, as well as fame. Will contain a good counsel and collection of material for human well-being, will give guidance to the people of the future as well as future in all their actions, and will be enriched by the teachings of all the scriptures, and with it will give a review of all arts and crafts. So, Natya Shastra was meant to take elements from the four Vedas and include these under one head. It ventured to draw from the Rig Veda the recitative quality, from the Yajur Veda histrionic representation, from the Atharv Veda rituals and style, and from the Sam Veda the rasas. Importantly, Natya Shastra is best known for expounding the theory of rasa, which is particularly relevant for us in understanding the aesthetic sensibility of Kalidasa. The peculiar sensibility of Kalidasa will be focused in as we move ahead. We'll be focusing at the sensibility of Kalidasa and how it is very much a part of these conventions of Natya and its Shastra. So the theory of drama. So let for Sheldon Pollock, rasa is that which can be savored. To him, Bharata's language often clearly suggests that his analytical focus is on rasa in the character. The comic, for example, is seen to exist for the most part in women and characters of low status. So even here, it is not the king, but the jester, the court jester, you know, who would give us the rasa of comic. Uh, and it implies, or at least later is taken to imply, the pre-existence of rasa in the character and hence the character's analytical primacy. Bharata provides us with a list of eight rasa: the erotic, which is Shringara; the comic, which is Hasya; the furious, which is Rudra; the pathetic, which is Karuna; the heroic, which is Veer; the marvelous, which is Adbhut; and the odious, which is Bibhitsa; and the terrible, which is Bhayanka. All these have their specific importance in the writer's scheme of things. Among these, the rasa of Shringara reigns supreme. This is because Shringara is the rasa of pleasure and beauty. Bharata is obviously an assumed name. The Bharatas were originally the bards of the powerful Bharata tribe, celebrated in the Rig Veda. A bardic ancestry is therefore implied and presupposed in the name. Later, the word came to signify an actor. The bardic tradition of the epics had a strong influence on the development of drama. Recitations of stories may have taken the form of several voices, delivering different parts of the narrative or of speaking the parts of different characters and accompanying their recitals with appropriate gestures and facial expressions. Recitations of the epics continue to be popular forms of entertainment for centuries and have continued right to this day in temples and village squares. The epics stand solidly behind the classical literature in both drama and the long poem. The plots of several plays and poems are taken from them. It would appear then that many of the elements of drama were already in place at the early time. So, even in the case of the play that you're going to read, you would see all these rasas being used by Kalidasa. The rasa of comic, which is known as Hasya; the rasa of erotic, Shringar; the rasa of furious, Rudra; the pathetic, which is Karuna; the heroic, Veer; the marvelous, Adbhut; the odious, Bibhitsa; and the terrible, Bhayanka. And that is why Kalidasa is considered one of the major playwrights, classical Sanskrit playwrights. Now it would appear that these elements were already in place um, at the time of Panini, the great grammarian, who was also a poet. With various traditions converging around this time, the literary traditions of the Vedas and epics, the popular and the folk play traditions, centering perhaps around vegetation rites and festivals such as sowing and harvesting, the ritual drama and the dance with its storyline, it was inevitable that drama, as we understand it, should have been evolving into its final form. The movement was ripe for the emergence of new art form, the drama. All that was needed was the man of genius who could weld the different elements at hand to create the Nataka as we know it. In the prologue to Malvikana Mitram, Kalidasa names his predecessors Bhasa, Somila, Kaviputra, and others. While we shall never know whether one of these named or one of the others who might have come earlier was the author of the first play, we can be certain that in Kalidasa's hand, drama reached a high peak of achievement. Um, so the Natya Shastra is a treatise on practically all the literary aspects of drama and all matters relating to theatre, from the construction of the playhouse or Natya Mandapa to audience response. Chapter 2 of the text gives us a general idea of the ancient Sanskrit theatre. Till now, we were looking at the elements that are there, the elements of performance, the elements of emotions, the element of feeling that is there and has been studied in Natya Shastra, that is there in the plays, in the ancient Sanskrit plays. Now, the chapter two of the Natya Shastra, which is important to study when we are talking about Kalidasa and his play, talks about the Sanskrit theatre. It talks about the Sanskrit theatre, ancient Sanskrit theatre, but we cannot claim to have a clear and accurate picture of the detail. The Natya Mandapa, that is the playhouse, would have been designed in the shape of a mountain cave and have two ground levels, small windows, and free-form gust of winds, so that the voices of the actors and singers, as well as sound of the musical instrument, will echo. So the shape of the mountain cave is an interesting detail because not only does it reveal an awareness of the acoustical properties of structure, but it also suggests that that originally shows and spectacles and even plays might have been presented in cave theaters. The playhouse was built of close-set bricks of fine quality on level ground and faced east. The walls were plastered and then whitewashed. The inner walls were covered with beautiful paintings. It is clear that Bharata intended the playhouse to be not merely a place of entertainment but one with aesthetic appeal. Carved figures of elephants, tigers, snakes, and statues were required to be placed at different spots in the theater. So these are the architectural details that were of the theater during that time. So all these paintings, the way it is shaped like a mountain cave, not only played the role, the decorative function, but it also, as is pointed out, the shape in itself um, reveals that the people who were, you know, um, who made the playhouse, who were involved in,
लेकिन ये पार्किंग दिया है यहाँ पर डायरेक्ट है ना ऑफिस का लोकेशन ये देखना
in creating a play, in writing, they were aware of the uh, acoustical properties of the structure, how sound, influences. But Bharata strongly recommends that the medium-sized playhouse of 96 feet by 48 feet is the most suitable because in a larger playhouse, the voice will not carry far. It will lose its quality of tone and become weak and cannot be understood. So, due to its large size, the subtle play of the expressions of the face will also be not visible to the audience. So, the playhouse was divided into two equal halves, the auditorium and the stage with a green room inside it. The green room's size was 48 feet by 48 feet if we take the medium sized playhouse as the model. The auditorium had seats of brick and wood arranged in rising tiers like a staircase. The stage was raised 27 inches off the floor of the auditorium and demarcated into the front stage, which was the acting area for the most part, and backstage, where the musicians and drummers were seated. Jewels and precious gems were placed underneath the stage during the building of the playhouse according to prescriptions based on their auspiciousness. A wall with two doors, one for the entry and the other for the exit of actors, separated the stage from the green room. A curtain of rich material hung before the doors. Offstage effects might have been produced either in the space behind the curtain or in the green room itself. Example: Hamsavati's song and the Bard's praise song in Act 5 of Shakuntala, the mystic voice in Act 4. So how these in performance, how was it played out? uh, so the next is, there was little or no scenery and a minimum of props made of light materials were used. Language therefore became very important, as in the Elizabethan theatre. The imagery painted the scenes and much was left to the imagination of the spectator. We see instances of these use of language in Act 2 of Shakuntala, where the king, as soon as he enters, describes the fleeing deer, and a little later he describes in detail the outskirts of the hermitage. Sanskrit drama clearly reveals its dance origins. Miming is often indicated by the stage direction. Dance is very much a part of it. The whole of the fourth act in Urvasi, the Bengal Recension, comprises song and dance interspersed with snatches of prose as the king wanders around demented, even where there is no formal dancing as such. It is clear that the Sanskrit drama leans heavily on dance technique. The stances adopted by the various characters, their gestures, facial expression, their very gait and style of walking belong to the grammar and vocabulary of dance. So, dance was an important part of the dramatic performance. Now, costume, jewelry, hairstyle were also an important means that served, that highlighted the ethnic, regional, and hierarchical significance. How the actor was, what the actor is wearing, the hairstyle of the actor, the jewelry of the actor. It not just represented the who the character is, but it also represented emotional states. For example, the king's costume when suffering from remorse, in the play Abhijnanasakuntalam, after he has told Shakuntala off. So, entering Shakuntala with her hair done in a single braid to signify the grief of a woman separated from her husband.
खाना खाए
बच्चा खाए हैं 4 बार, तब चावल चाहिए उनका, खीर खाई है बना के।
In the play. So, color was also used symbolically both in the costumes and the makeup. Faces may have been painted, as is still done in Kathakali and Chow dance forms. Four main colors: blue, red, yellow, black, and four combination of these: grey, gold, green, and pink appear to have been in use. Other colors are also mentioned as blends of these. Masks may have also been used. The use of mask that rightly belongs to ritual drama and its performance. So, depersonalization and understanding rasa and the emotions that it is producing is in this context that there is a distance between the actor who is performing the role, because the actor becomes the character, right? And also in playing the character, there is a distance between the communication, the perceiving
शादीशुदा थी वो लड़की।
the perceiving of the very action, so that they can they are successfully able to delineate what their aim, what their goal is, their performative goal, the goal of the play in itself, right? The aim of the play in itself, the ethical aim, right? So all these external tappings of the character immediately convey a great deal about the play and the story to the least educated and unsophisticated among the audience. So, stylization in speech and acting, the symbolic use of color, the use of mask, and of dance and miming all serve to distance the play world of drama and separate it from the everyday world. The classical drama of India uses Prakrits or regional dialects as well as Sanskrit, which was spoken by Brahmins, kings, and high officials. Women, even queens, children, and the court jester speak Prakrit. Low characters like the fisherman and policeman in Act 6 of Shakuntala also speak in a dialect. This provides Sanskrit plays with a rich variety in speech. and it is not possible to make the differentiation between the classical language and the dialects, and between the dialects themselves in translation.
नहीं नहीं वो तो बात सही है।
Abhijanana Sakuntala. So, as is pointed out in the introduction itself of that
अरे
is written
हमका
by
डर लगा था, हमने
that
भी
is
कहीं
there
ले
in
गए इंटरव्यू के लिए।
Penguin Classic,
अब
that
भैया
is written by
साकेत में ले
Chandra
जाना
Rajan.
था
She
मेट्रो
points
स्टेशन
out that
और
the play has come to us
ले
in
जा कि या
various
इधर आओ इधर,
recension,
वो निधि
various
फोन कर करके पूछ रहे उसने में है कंप्यूटर वाले में, किस
translations.
चीज वाले में था,
So,
निधि
what we are
किसमें था,
looking at is the Bengal recension.
कंप्यूटर वाले में बोला हुआ रानी ने कहा
There is, of course, the difference
सिखाओ
between
सबको
the
जाके।
north,
हाँ
particularly north recension,
बड़ी अब फिर
then the
नीचे तुमको नहीं मिली
Bengal
हैं, ऊपर ऊपर
recension,
बिल्डिंग में
and
मिली हैं।
the south, the
ऊंची ऊंची
play
गलियों
as
में।
has been translated from the south. And why are we looking at studying the Bengal recension is because not only does it have more verses, but also there is the description of the nature, the aesthetic quality of it is has been pointed out. The aesthetics has been
नंबर होएगा
focused upon in this recension, the Bengal recension is way
मुझे बनी है नहीं याद ही है।
is unique, is more appealing for a reader in comparison to other recensions. So the chronology of Kalidasa's work is uncertain. It is only the sense of a developing pattern in the poet's oeuvre that places them in certain tentative order. Till now we were looking at Kalidasa, his work. In the previous sections we have looked at Kalidasa, his work, as well as who is Kalidasa, the place of Kalidasa Ujjaini that he refers to again and again in his work. And with it we looked at the work of Kalidasa. These are the works of Kalidasa, the poems, the plays and the epic that he has written. And then we looked at the dramatic conventions that have been followed in the play Kalidasa. So for that we studied Natya Shastra, that talks about the theory of drama, as after having studied the ancient Sanskrit plays, it talks about how in ancient Sanskrit plays the performance was equally influenced by the context, the content, as well as the performance, of which dance was an important part, music was an important part. What role did costume play, jewelry play, right? The stage, the type of stage it was, so all of it. Now we look at Abhijnana Sakuntalam, and this section particularly talks about the works of Kalidasa, the various works, the three poems, the epic, the three plays, all these works, and the similarity between these works. What are the elements that are similar in all the works that he has written? So first of all, it is being pointed out right here is that it is very difficult to place the works in a chronological order, and
बाबू
there are certain features that in the poem Meghadutam and Sakuntala that are similar. So first is the idea of alaka. What is alaka? Alaka is a world created by our dreams and desires where time stands still and whose ways are untrodden by the unimaginative, where sensual music fills the night to overflowing under the moonlight. No other works of the poet reveal more clearly the blend of the erotic and spiritual that characterizes Shiva mythology and is reflected in Kalidasa's work. A mystic feeling from the transcendental combines with the sensual feeling. So the combination of spiritual and erotic, um, the combination, the coming together of the spiritual, of the erotic, and the use of nature not only provides a distinctive quality to the work of Kalidasa, but it is also one of the common features in his work. Uh, the action of the play Shakuntala move out from the green world of the nature, set apart and centering around the heroine, who is presented as the lady of nature, into the gilded world of Dushyanta's palace and pleasure gardens, and finds its resolution in yet another world, a higher world that is inaccessible to the ordinary mortal. So the green world, as we see in Act 1, then Dushyanta's by
डालो नहीं है इसमें, देखना
Act 5, it
पड़ता
is
है नहीं
Dushyanta's.
है
Act
यहाँ
4,
से
Act
खुद ही
5,
सॉल्व करना
it is
पड़ता है
Dushyanta's palace. And by Act 7, it is the hermitage of Maricha and Aditi, a place which is timeless, which is the culmination, which is the coming together of the elements of of mortal and the immortal, the spiritual and the erotic. So this is a place where Maricha and Aditi reside, and whose origins are there before the world ever was. A world that is a creation of art to be held against the insistent, pushing realities and pressure of the actual world. So the movement out of the green world is
हाँ दीदी
accomplished
हमारी
with
बता रही
much
थी स्कूलों में
reluctance
जो
on
दो
the
दाई
heroine's
लोग
part,
लगी हैं वो
that is
भी
Shakuntala,
10वीं
when
पास
she
हमारी
disappears
लेट
from the
है
view behind a line of great
हाँ
forest trees. The
हमारे
green
बेटे ने
world
थर्ड वर्ड कर रखी वो भी
magical
10वीं पास
vanishes too.
मांगती
The word magical advisely
हर
is
जगह
has
10वीं
been
पास हम
used
मांग रहे
because a magico-sacral aura surrounds the
10वीं में पढ़ा
deer,
हो तो
that Dushyanta is following. And following the deer, he reaches into the depth of the forest and chances upon Kanava's
अच्छा
hermitage.
इसीलिए
The
पहले
black buck is
8वीं और
a
5वीं
sacred
की मानता
animal in
थी
the Vedas.
पहले
The
8वीं की बड़ी
image
मानता थी
in
बहुत ज्यादा
of Pinaki Shiva is a
पहली
resonant
8वीं की
with
शादी
mythical elusiveness. The myth alluded to
8वीं की
refers
नौवीं
to
लग
the
जाती थी
destruction of the sacrifice of the god by Shiva, who was enraged at being denied his share in it. The sacrifice, out of the fear of Shiva's arrow, flew up into the sky and decapitated it, and its head became the star Marga Siraz, deer's head, while Mrigasiras. So while Shakuntala leaves the hermitage and the green world vanishes, what remains is an empty desert, for she is the lady of nature. Attempts made in Act 6 to
चावल
restore
की
the
गैस
world
क्यों
and
लिखी
all
है
the happenings of the initial meeting of Dushyanta and Shakuntala
निकलनी
that
नहीं
led
चाहिए
to their
बस
love
बचाना
and
नहीं चाहिए
union
निकले
fail.
तो फट लेके
The reenactment of the event turns
तो फिर
into a
वही
mirage. The
पता नहीं
image
ये
of
खरीद
the
ली
mirage ought to be linked with that of the empty desert. The representation of that magical world with all its detail, the blossoming trees and vines that we see in the Act 1 that are presaging the coming of the lovers, coming together of the lovers, their marriage, the full flowing rivers, the mating deers, the pair of geese on the river bank, rendered with dead accuracy by the amateur painter and praised by a pair of art critics belonging obviously to the school of realism, remains just that, lifeless. The illusion that Dushyanta strives to transform into the living presence of the beloved whom he has spurned is shattered by the Madhvya's caustic wit to which nothing is sacred. No overt comment is made about the relative merits of these several worlds, nor is the stark contrast drawn between one and the other, for it is not the characteristic of Kalidasa's poetic vision to see experience in simple black and white terms. So you'd see that this particular idea of Shiva and Shakti again is being resonated when we talk about how the play proceeds. It is the creation of this beautiful world where we see the union of lovers, the Shringara Rasa, the erotic, and later on. As we know that in ancient Sanskrit, the purpose in the theory of drama, studying the ancient Sanskrit
वो जो
plays,
कविता मैम की
talks about
मम्मी
how the
है
purpose
6
of the
बजे
play
उनके
is
स्टाफ
not
पर
just
पहुंच
limited
जाती
to the
हैं
pleasure, but also the
मगर वो
pleasure
कुछ
where
नहीं
the being gets to know of the internal, of the
6
unconscious,
बजे कह रही
and
बारिश
is
हो जाए
able to
ठंडी
bridge the
हो
gap
6 बजे
between the
स्टाफ पर
conscious and
पहुंच
the
जाओ बस भैया
unconscious,
बैग
is
पकड़
able
लो
to understand the
हम्म,
moral and the immoral, is able to so also here is a reflection of
उस
how
टाइम पे तुमको वहाँ खड़ा
Kalidasa
होना होना चाहिए
in his worshipping of
लेते
the creative, the
अनुज है चाची
cosmic, the
कितने
formless, is giving it a form in the form of giving it a form in its representation of a vision that takes a concrete
तो
form
सही
in the
रहा है
coming together of the
9 बजे का
lovers
टाइम है
earlier in
अनुज
their
चाची
immature in their immaturity, then as mature lovers
सिलाई करनी
who are in touch with their spiritual their internal, their spiritual. The different planes of consciousness are touched upon in these two works: dream and awakening, delusion and loss of memory, disorientation where the mind whirls around unfocused, that is Brahm, recollection and recognition.
कैसे पढ़ेंगे
Interesting observations are made about a state of mind where recollection stands on the preconscious threshold, inhibited from stepping over the thin line drawn by the conscious mind, acting as censor for whatever reason, to produce uneasiness and perplexity. Perplexity means confusing things that are confusing, that are difficult, perplexed. Um, so until some inconvertible, tangible fact, tangible is something that can be felt. Fact breaks the barrier down. We refer to such passages as the following. The beloved distraught, forgetting the melody, no sooner had she composed it, hovering uncertain between waking and dreaming. A day lily on a cloudy day, neither open nor shut, and nervously pushing back her tangled braid off the curve of her cheek. In Shakuntala, at the beginning of Act 5, we see Dushyanta restless and disturbed after listening to the song in the background, but not knowing why. He does not relate the sadness ineffable, the falls of all of a sudden like a shadow over his heart, to the memory of an event in his present life, the marriage to Shakuntala, but to one in some former life, whose memory lies buried in the unconscious. The stage direction at this point directs the actor to portray a state of bewilderment, disorientation, pariah kula. At the close of the act, Dushyanta again expresses the nagging doubt. So, in Act 5, what we see that he is fond of Shakuntala because the curse that has been given to Shakuntala by Durvasa uh, is this that, because of the person, because in the, because failing to have performed your duty as a host, uh, whatever is it that is the closest to you, and because of which you fail to perform your duty, you would now the very thing would be taken away from you. So this is this is where and this plays out, we'll be studying, when looking at the critical analysis of it, we'll see that how this is an important element of bringing the cosmic, tying of the cosmic with the with the human part of it. This is what is being pointed out, that Dushyanta is, because Dushyanta has forgotten who Shakuntala is. This is being represented through an uncertainty, a mind that has nagging doubts, that is doubting that, okay, I might, that there is something that I'm missing out on, but what is not being remembered by me. In the play, in the portrait episode, the real and the imagined fuse. It needs the caustic comment of the realist Madhya to break them apart and demarcate them into separate areas. To him, the line between the real and the illusory is hard and clear, and on its farther side lies madness, to which the king is perilously close as he, Madhya, views the situation. Apsaras, born of the water. So, not only, as has been pointed out, right? Not only are Vedas a source of source for the drama, but also the fairy tales, the folk tales. So the apsaras, born of the waters, the water of creation, are like yaksa yaksis that are there in Meghadutam, associated with life and fertility and seen as beneficent powers. In the earliest mention of Shakuntala in Vedic literature, she is described as an apsara who conceived and bore the great Bharata at a place called Nadapur. In the epic, which is the direct source for the play, Shakuntala is not an Apsara herself, but the daughter of one, and she is presented as such in the play. Kalidasa does not let us forget that the heroine is not wholly of this mortal world of ours. She belongs to two worlds, sharing in the qualities of the parents who belong to two different worlds, invested with nature's beauty and spontaneous creative energies, as well as its holiness, and inheriting the ability for aesthetic control that makes her a striking presence in the last act, though she speaks very few words. So she is, as a character, she is an amalgamation of the nature, the spiritual, and the, the creative, um, the creative, as well as the cosmic, right? So Abandoned at birth, Shakuntala is looked after by the birds, Sakunta, that encircle her protectively so that she remains unharmed by until the sage Kanava finds her and names her Shakuntala because she was first adopted in a sense by the birds who cared for her. She is portrayed as a child of nature or the lady of nature. She is the main protagonist of the play, Abhijanana Shakuntalam, kin to all forms of life in the sacred grove. The aspect of Shakuntala's personality ought to be kept in mind. She brings to the king something of the significance that is lacking in his life. The materialistic king is lacking the spiritual in his life. A touch though he is described to be gallant, he is described to be humble, yet he is still, to be great, to be, you know, great, he needs to be in touch with his with his inner self. So this is what Shakuntala brings to him, right? And then uh, she brings to the king something of significance, that is being able to rise above the uh, materialistic side of life. So now this is referred to indirectly in Act 1 in the blessings pronounced by the anchorite, and emphasized in Act 2 is a metaphor for barrenness of more than one sort. I might venture out to characterize it as spiritual barrenness. So Dushyanta is led by the deer into Shakuntala's world, the green world of nature possessing plenitude, fertility, beauty, and grace, as well as holiness. Later, he is led into yet another world, the golden world of Maricha and Aditi, which appears to be the world of nature perfected. So this is not where Shakuntala and Dushyanta are going to reside, right? So this golden world is the world of timelessness, right? It is a world that is that is uh, above, that is
देख नहीं
beyond
रहा हूँ सर
सुन ना
uh,
लाई
the the kala, right? The kala of which the, Dushyanta and the Kala and the karma that Dushyanta and Shakuntala are a part of. So Dushyanta's narrow and enclosed world of the gilded court, circumscribed by the round of royal ceremonies and pleasures, is thus expanded by virtue of his encounter with Shakuntala, who is of this world and yet not wholly of the world. Fairy tale element are present in the poem as well as the play. The sacred pool of golden lotuses, guarded by a genius with specific instruction to follow, the failure to carry them out, the curse and the consequent loss of love, status, and superhuman power are characteristic of the folklore and fairy tale. Folk and fairy tale contain irrational elements. They are far from being realistic and are frequently immoral in the attitudes they display. The curses in them are prime examples of their irrationality, for the punishment meted out is invariably far in excess of the wrongdoing. Often punishment strikes sudden and swift even in the case of an error committed unwittingly. These factors should be kept in mind in an approach to and interpretation of the events in the poem and the play. The Yaksa's exile, Durvasa's curse, and Shakuntala's repudiation by the forgetful Dushyanta. The proneness to indulge in strictly realistic, moralistic response, seen often in critical evaluation of our literature, ought to be played down and contained in an overall view which takes into account the several elements from different cultural literary sources that come together to shape the world of a play or a poem, and as can be seen in the case of Abhijanana Shakuntalam too, the play that you're going to read, right? So these are the irrational elements that play out also, are the other side of it is that they are binding the realistic and the moralistic together with the cosmic. So the curse itself does not lend itself to any simple explanation. It represents a whole complex of ideas, one of which would be to perceive it as the exteriorization of the state of mind, where some exclusiveness and obsessive preoccupation results in psychological imbalance. This is the simplistic view held by sage Durvasa, who is himself obsessed with a sense of his own holiness and ascetic powers. Some critics adopt an ethical view. Tagore speaks of Shakuntala's fall and her redemption through penitence. S.K. Dey describes the curse of Durvasa as playing the part of a stern but beneficent providence. But a curse is also a metaphor for the arbitrariness of life. It points to the inexplicable, even absurd element that is of the very essence of life and which is not only beyond explanation and justification but beyond all comprehension. So, how this is bringing in the ethical dimension to the play, the idea of curse, it is bringing to it the element of folk and the fairy tales. It is bringing it to the element of you know uh, uh, of divine intervention. It along with it is also looking at the arbitrariness, the the quality of the essence of life, the quality of being human, that cannot be the events that cannot be explained why, what, right, to what effect, and it operates, hence has been pointed out that how a curse operates, the human failing is trivial compared to the enormity of the suffering and pain. It concretizes the troubling question which faces every human being at one time or another. Why did this happen? Why did it have to be so? The curse also shapes the answer to the question in the form of that uncertain certitude with which man has to shore up his crumbling faith in order to survive. Call it faith or karma or the absurd or simple acceptance. This is how things are, this is life. Shakuntala herself blames her own actions in a formal life for her unhappiness in the present, the Yaksha's response in acceptance, with the fate that things have to change for the better. Kalidasa does not preach, he does not moralize, he shows us life as it is in all its beauty and splendor, as well as its inexplicable vagaries which bring misfortunes deservedly or undeservedly. So this is also playing the part of fulfilling the part of the play, the purpose of a play, that is bringing to the audience that understanding of themselves, a better understanding of themselves, as well as is helping them you know relish relish the actions that are both real and unreal in their real and unreal, as we know it is a drama being performed, right? So the poem does not this fantastical that is combined with the real, and this in this coming together of the fantastical, of the fantasy, of the fairy tale elements that are irrational, with the real, with the absurd, right? The real and the absurd um, is what makes the drama, what brings to the drama its its beauty. Um, so the poem does not describe it, it merely speaks of the curse as a consequence. So the poem Meghadutam also has, so we're talking about the similarities that there are in the works of of Kalidasa. So there is also, this event of curse that happens in Meghadutam. It is a failure to perform the duties belonging to one's office. The phrases italicized are the two meanings of the phrase Swadhi Kara Paramadha. The phrase in the text, that is Swadhi Kara Pramatha, in the adjectival form. So, failing to perform one's duty. So, in both versions of the legend provided in the old commentaries, the duties assigned to the Yaksha appear to be privilege and an honor bestowed on him, and his failure to carry them out seems to indicate that he is insufficiently sensible of the high regard and esteem in which he was held by Kubera. This is what happens in Meghadutam. And this element could also be, the element of curse has also been used in Abhijnanasakuntalam, where she is cursed by Durvasa, having performed to fail her duty. Now, the play Shakuntala is a beautiful blend of romance and fairy tale, with elements of comedy. The play is located in the mythic past, in a world where mortals still move with gods. The human and divine has intermingled, has come together in this play. In this world, the gods are not distant but friends of heroes. Now let us look at um, the play. So the play Shakuntala, we know, is a beautiful blend of romance and fairy tale with elements of comedy. In the last section of the Satapatha Brahmana, that are devoted wholly to the description of the rituals of the horse sacrifice, that is Aswamedha Yajna, where the names of some sort of kings were performed, them are mentioned. We come across the line in Nadapit, the Apsara Shakuntala conceived Bharata. Okay, so I would like to correct myself and I apologize for this grave mistake. That is, the play starts with Dushanta following the deer. He is, the play starts with, Act 1 starts with that there is a king Dushanta who is on a pleasure, who is spending a leisurely time, who is uh, actually, you know, um, he is seeing enjoying himself, and he is after a deer, he is hunting, and he's hunting a deer, and hunt, the idea of hunt, the idea of of preying, a predator preying, and the pleasure associated with it, now this is how the play.
अरे वो तो सरी रहा वो तो सरी वो तो ये रहती वो तो ये रहती बहुत बोलते हम हमको दूसर जनी यही बात समझानी थी इनकी मम्मी ने वही ये सब्जी ठलिया वाली दूसर कौन नहीं है
Performs it, and by this time we see that in Nadapit, the Apsara Shakuntala has conceived and bore Bharata, the son of Dushyanta and Shakuntala. This is the earliest literary reference to Shakuntala and her son, who performed many horse sacrifices on the banks of the river Yamuna after he had conquered the world, thus fulfilling the prophecy of the mystic personage Maricha in the play. Nadapit is glossed by the commentator as Kanava's hermitage, but that identification has obviously been made on the basis of Shakuntala Dushyanta story in the Mahabharata, where, however, the name Nadapit does not occur. The original story of Shakuntala referred to in the in Mahabharata is lost to us, uh, but we have only a very long and earthy version of it, is the epic, that is in the epic that is there in the Mahabharata, that has been used in the Mahabharata. The actual story has been lost to us, but what we have is the story, the version that is present in the Mahabharata. It must be our guess then that Nadapit was some place of enchantment, a pool of apsaras perhaps, where strange things could happen and mortals meet and fall in love with celestial nymphs. With the very first line of the play, we are transported to the world of enchantment. A handsome young king out hunting is lured far out into another world, and the inevitable happens. The song of the actress, that is Nati. The actress had already lured the waiting audience into this world. Music is used skillfully to make this transition. So, in performance, music is used to make the transition um, from the world of the king to the world of you know the world of Shakuntala, the world of nature. A point to note here is the word used for the fleet deer that has drawn King Dushyanta far away is Shringara, which is also the name of a raga or musical, saranga, which is also the name of a raga or a musical mode. The raga saranga is defined as one that through the attractive arrangement of notes colors the mind of the hearer. Ranga signifies color, paint, and also the stage. So music is being used to project an appropriate mood. The play is located in the mythic past, in the world where mortals still moved with gods, the human and divine intermingled. In this world, the gods were our distant but friends of heroes like Dushyanta, who participated with them to keep order in the universe. By removing the action of the play into the world of the past, distant in time, a poetic and dramatic purpose is served. It inhabits a realistic approach to the play. It clearly marks the line that separates the fictive world of the play from our everyday world. In the Sanskrit text, the two words atha, now, and iti, does. At the beginning and end of the play, enclose it, and it were literally it would read as follow. Now begins the play, Atha, entitled Abhijanana Shakuntalam, and thus ends the play, Iti. The play world thus created contains another world, the world of the deep and dark forest near the river Malini, the green world in which we are lured by the deer and where we meet Shakuntala, the child of nature, who, as noted earlier on, is also envisaged as the guardian deity of the woodland. As already noted, Apsaras, born of waters, that is the creative waters where life originated, are powers of nature associated with fertility and plenitude, as are Yaksha and Yakshis in the case of Meghadutam.
साथ में दोनों लोग करते
So, in the ancient myth of the churning of ocean by gods and anti-gods to obtain ambrosia, the cup of immortality, the Apsaras rose out of water, together with many other wondrous things, including beauty herself. In the Vedic myth, referred to Shakuntala is an Apsara and daughter of an Apsara in the epic tale, which is the immediate source of the play. Uh, this is an aspect of her origin that is important to keep in mind, because in the play she is seen as the lady of nature who is born out of this whose origin is so divine that she is born out of the churning of ocean in which the gods and anti-gods had come together to attain the cup of immortality, and the origin of Bharata, her son Bharata, the coming of the great king Dushyanta and Shakuntala, and with it, a lineage of the lineage of
तो वही है, फिर मैंने सोचा आगे के लिए तो करना है ही, तो अब ये कर लूं, फिर आपको दिखा तो दूं कि फोन बंद करके भी चलता है। बंद करके चलता है? हाँ, मतलब बिना लिखे भी चलता है। तो यो मेरा भी चल जाता है, बिना टाइप करे है ना। ये मेरी भी लगा दी क्या? इसमें सब लिखा हुआ है, सारा रूटीन वगैरह लिखा हुआ है, शिफ्टिंग वगैरह भी लिखा है। ये मैंने साइन करा है।
lineage of Bharat, lineage of Dushyanta,
भाई बंद कर दो, मेरे लग
the birth of Bharata, right? It is talked about. So there, his mother and father, Shakuntala is a daughter of Apsara, as well as a a profound, a profound asset, knowledgeable man, a
टाइम चल रहा है, कहीं कोरोना ये लॉकडाउन लग गया
oneness in her nature and the nurture blend without being in opposition to other. So she is not just nature, right? The fourth dimension to it is she's just not nature, but she's also a nurturer, right? She's a mother. So now blending of these two elements, these two characteristics together, right? And how they flow as the scene change, right, from the green world to the material world to the world of to the court of Dushyanta, and then again to Maricha's hermitage, which is timeless, and where both the lovers meet, having gone through all the um, torments, all the difficulties, having faced all of it, are meeting again, the reunion, and where where their where their union has bore its fruit, that is the son Bharata. So she is an ornament of the hermitage as well as a creature of the woodlands. Both phrases are the king's. Not only are a number of flower images other than the conventional one of the lotus petaled eyes and slender wine-like arms are used to describe her, but she herself is being her beauty is described as she's been seen as a flower. She and the jasmine are constantly brought together, like the beloved in Meghadutam. They are sisters. So this is how language is also being used. Look at how language is being used the by Kalidasa, right? So he's using various nature. He's referring to various elements in the nature, right? And symbolizing the beauty, it's symbolizing the coming together, using it to refer to the union, presaging with the help of it marriage, right? So it cannot, it seems, Shakuntala herself poses the question. Rent from my dear father's lap like a sapling of the sandal tree uprooted from the side of Malaya mountain. How can I survive ever on an alien soil?
उनसे पूछो ओ
So
बारिश
this
हो
is
कुछ
in
भी
Act
हो
4 that she says
टाइम पे
that
पहुंचाना
image
पड़ता
of the
है नहीं
sandal tree
पहुंचाओ
will
तो
reoccur
कंपनी से भी
later, very
धक्का लिया
significant
और
in
कस्टमर से भी
context,
नहीं खाते
in very significant context in Act
नहीं
7,
निकालता नहीं
to
है
which
लेकिन
we
फिर भी
shall refer
निकालो
presently. Act 5 is a clear proof that she is trampled on, stripped and mutilated,
लेकिन ये है ना कि
and is
जब
at
पार
the
कर
point
अगर
of
सही टाइम
death
पे नहीं
when
आया
she is
तो भाई
wrapped from the
अपना तो
astonished
बनाओ
gaze of the beholders by a shaft of light. So divine intervention again, right?
मालिक
She is
वगैरह नहीं
taken
है
away
छोटी
by
छोटी
her mother,
कंपनीज है ना
Menaka,
उनका ऑर्डर उठा लेते
right?
हैं
So
कि
in
आपका
this
पार्टनर
connection,
हम
it is very
डिलीवरी
important to
करवाएंगे अपने
note two
लड़के का
facts made clear in the play. Firstly, Shakuntala is never seen as actually living in the gilded world of the court.
तो वहाँ पे फ्री में
She is
सिखाते
never a
हैं,
part of the gilded world of the court.
ठीक है,
The
आपको पहले
fact is only
बाइक
talked about in
सिखाएंगे,
various
उसके
ways by
बाद फिर
different
काम
people at
करने के लिए
different time,
भेजेंगे।
but it is not
तो वो कितना अच्छा है ना,
part of the play.
फ्री
She
बाइक
is
कौन
never
देता है, फिर
brought
नई
into the
बाइक आप
direct
लेके आओ तो वो
contact with the
गिरेगी
first
पड़ेगी,
queen,
इससे अच्छा इसको
Hamsavati,
नहीं लेकिन अब ये
or the
बाइक नहीं
queen
देते
mother, or the
नहीं
ladies,
हम
other
दूसरी
ladies of
बाइक
the
उनको कर
Dushyanta's
देंगे
place,
पैसे देते
as
हैं
the
हम यही
heroine
साइन
of
कर दी ना, वहाँ दे रहे हैं,
Vikrama
इसलिए बता रही हूँ।
वो
Vasyam.
इसलिए वो काफी देर से लग रहा
Also,
होगा या
an
फिर उनके
apsara
कंपनी से
is
उंगली हो गई ऐसे
so
लेकिन आजकल सारे रूल्स
Shakuntala
बदल दिए
is a heroine different from the others, Malvika and Urvashi. The noble Dharini and Osinari,
क्योंकि कोई
Sudaksina
कोई ऐसा
and
होता है ना कि वो
Indumati.
अपने
She's
डिलीवरी
special
बॉय है
in
क्या,
class by herself with
डिलीवरी
the
बॉय है जो
beloved
सामान देकर
of the
आते हैं।
poem, Meghadutam. So, secondly, the
तो
benediction
क्या
is
हुआ,
not
इसमें
spoken in
कोई
this
छोटा
play
बड़ा
in the
काम नहीं
world
है,
of the court,
पैसा
in
अच्छा
the
मिलना
king's
चाहिए,
world. It is
गाड़ी का बनाना
spoken beyond the world of the court, beyond the king's world, which is the perfected world of the primal parents, Maricha and Aditi. This is talk certainly of a return to the world, but the play comes to its end in Maricha's hermitage
नहीं
on
काम करते
Hemakuta,
करते एरिया की नॉलेज अपने आप
Kailasha, which mortals cannot reach. But mortals cannot come to these regions on their own, noble lady. Before the king can ever can enter this world, he has to be purified. First, he proves his worth by battling the forces of darkness and disorder that threaten the order of the universe.
अच्छा वहीं पे तुम्हारे रिश्तेदार ज्यादा रहते होंगे।
For this, he has to be roused from the state of utter despondency. After what happens is that after he has, spurned, he has asked Shakuntala to leave. He doesn't recognize her. There is a sense of gloom that takes over Dushyanta. He's not, because he in his mind there is a doubt that he did know the lady, but he's not able to actually remember her. So he's taken over by
काम
grief,
करते होंगे तब तो इधर लाए।
and but he has to be purified before the lovers meet, right? So the barrenness that was referred to again to earlier, the spiritual barrenness has to be restored, has to be attained by Dushyanta, the king of the material world, the gilded world, before he meets uh, the son and the mother,
शादी से पहले आए।
right? Before the reunion happens. So it is significant that it is deep concern for someone close to him. Madhvya, that is the court gesture, that brings in the element of hasya, that pulls him out of his depression, lacking the will to live. Dushyanta's part to Maricha's hermitage and the finding of what has been lost is essentially similar to that of Yakshas in the Meghadutam, in the poem Meghadutam. The images of sanctity and purification are repeated. Vishnu's triple stride, Ganga, celestial stream, the sacred pool of golden lotuses. In the whole of Act 7 is placed in the world of Maricha's
जानने
hermitage,
वाले का
where
मतलब
the
समझती है
highest
उसकी 10 बार एक
penances
ही जगह
are
से
wrought
तंजीर ले आई, वो
in the
जान गया
penance
था।
grove of the perfected
मैं
seers.
उसकी
It
यहाँ
is
से
a
कमेंट्री
world
ले रही हूँ सभी
where
को,
ascetics perform the
देते हैं
severest
मुझे उससे।
अब
austerities to
हमारे इधर
attain.
दुकान पे भी बहुत
Here
से कस्टमर
Maricha,
आते हैं
born
जब
of the
शटर
और क्या
self-existent
तो
light,
पापा
himself
ये लो
performs
प्रोडक्ट कम कर
penance
देते हैं
रियायत
with
हो
his
जाती है। हाँ
consort Aditi. The last stage that brings the play to a
जैसे
close
ये ना
is
पहले 40
exit.
का लाती थी।
No distinction is made between the characters belonging to the hermitage and the mortals who have descended to Dushyanta's capital. The Vikramahor Vasyam, whose theme is also the marriage of a mortal, King Purvasas, descended from the moon to a celestial nymph and their parting and reunion. The benediction is spoken on earth at the king's court, where Narada, who has come down to earth with a message of goodwill from Indra, has consecrated the little prince Ayush as the heir apparent. Um, Another significant point to note is the last stanza of Shakuntal, that is the benediction, is the tone and quality of the final words of the poet and the dramatist. May the self existent Lord, who unites in himself the dark and the light, whose infinite power pervades the universe, annihilate forever the round of my birth. Neela Lohita is the epithet used in Shiva. Neela, suggesting the dark blue of the poison the Lord swallowed at the beginning to save the newly created world, and Rohita is a variant, the brightness of Gauri or Shakti. The diets and triads in Indian thought are richly multivalent, and their meaning and symbolism can be endlessly explored and refined. Day night, light dark, beauty power, end endless, and so on. The tendency of the human mind is to see the world as constituted of categories of polarities. The bent of the Indian mind, and this polarity is also well explored in the play, in Kalidasa's play. So the bent of the Indian mind leads it to see these as balanced and to attempt to reconcile them is in a oneness in which the opposites are perceived as aspects of one and the same. The duality is reconciled in the Trinity as the classic Trimurti image of Shiva at Elephanta near Bombay. Maricha is described as the offspring of this self existent energy. This should be read in juxtaposition with the benediction. There is one further point to consider in relation to the benediction. Abhijnanasakuntalam is Kalidasa's last work, and the words spoken last are therefore eminently fitting as the final utterance of the great poet and dramatist. It is his farewell to his work and to the world in an ultimate sense. Kalidasa has arrived at a point in his life and career where every thought is of the other shore, but the words have a deeper poetic significance in the dramatic structure of the play. So while we are looking at trying to understand the ideological implication and the symbolism, the references that are there in the play, with it also is the dramatic, the dramatic structure of the play. How and the performative aspect of it, how it is being performed, the natya, right? How the natya is being performed, the elements that are enhancing the natya, right? So and the purpose of the natya, right? So the two worlds of the play, the green world of the woods and the gilded world of the royal court, are too far apart, and the reconciliation, reunion, and restoration cannot be celebrated in either of them. Where the two worlds in the poem Meghadutam are continuous and even interfused, there is a sharp break made in the play between the two worlds at the close of Act 4. Therefore, that moment of epiphany has to happen elsewhere, in another world, which is called the Golden World, the Hemakuta. That is Act 7, the hermitage of Maricha and Aditi. It is the mystic region that the Puranas place beyond the Himalayas, in the vicinity of mythical Mount Meru or Sumeru. It is not the initial world of enchantment we step into, the green world of the deep and dark forest. It is, as we saw earlier, a place coveted by ascetics who perform the severest penance to gain it. The place where the highest form of penances are wrought in the penance grove of the perfected seer. Right? Um, so this is also a symbolism of reaching this place, where is also a symbolism of how having performed their penance, having gone through their turbulence, the turbulent time, that they were destined to, um, and which was, according to um, the karma and and establishing dharma, as well as um, in in relation to the larger um, you know the larger um, plausible connotation in relation to the cosmic, to the divine, right? So the difference to the kala, right? So the difference in eternity is seen clearly in a kind of imagery that shapes them. The world of act 1 is the world of nature, with flowers blooming, honeybees hovering, of green foliage and tender young shoots. So this tender young shoots, the honeybees, right, the green foliage, the blooming, the flower, blooming of flowers, all of this enhance the element of erotic, as is seen in Act 1. In Act 7, on the other hand, color words are drawn mostly from a world of gold and gems and jewels, but of an elemental world and not words describing the glitter that is there in Act 4 5. So the golden sheen of the waters, the glitter of raindrop, the gleam of the flickering lightning, and the liquid gold of the mountain itself reflect the red and gold of sunset. Here, the lotuses are golden as in Alaka. The places of meditation are not green meadows where deer roam or the roots of trees under the green shade of leafy trees, but jeweled caves with celestial nymphs, gorgeously dressed and jeweled and seductive, walking about. It is a world of austere beauty, luminous with the light of the spirit. It is not a world of nature, spontaneous, informed by instinct, but the world that has been perfected. So in in just in opposition to the spontaneous is the perfected. And this perfected is a part of the restrained and the disciplined. And this is where the reunion of Dushyanta and Shakuntala happens. So certain prophecies are made in this golden world about the future after Dushyanta's time. The interest in this act is focused on the little prince, the future Bharata, bearer of the earth, who is to inherit the future. Maricha's prophecy echoed the incorporeal voice of the mystic fire that had already spoken. The little boy flanked by two hermit women, is the center of the last act, as Shakuntala, his mother, accompanied by two friends, is of the first. The two acts reflect each other in many respects. The scene where the king, after dismounting from the chariot, is about to enter the grove of Maricha's hermitage and has his first glimpse of his son is a replica of the scene in Act 1, where also the king, dismounting from his chariot at the fringes of the grove of Kannava's hermitage, enters and sees the boy as his mother for the first time, that is Shakuntala. The finding of the lost son and heir precedes and leads to the recognition of the mother. An interesting parallel is provided in the last scene. Words are keys to open doors of the imagination on its journey and exploration into the fictive world. The title Abhijnanasakuntalam underlies the central issue in the play. Shakuntala is recognized by virtue of a token of love, not by love itself. In the absence of concrete, tangible proof of love and marriage, she is lost. So, this tangible proof is the ring that was given to Shakuntala by Dushyanta before he leaves the hermitage. And having lost it, she also loses her identity. This idea of token of love is very important because it is in Act 5 and 6 that Kalidasa is probing most deeply into the heart of his society's accepted norms and values. He makes Miss Rakesi ask a highly significant question. Does a love like this need a token of recognition? So this probing is accompanied by another equally significant question, the question of knowing, which is related to the recognition of Shakuntala at the close of the play. How does one know? Is the truest inner prompting. It is own unassailable authority to the noble and virtuous. This is the way of knowing that the king claims for himself, but the claim is subjected to irony and scrutiny. What is knowing? What is knowing is the central question. Actually, it is, as much as it is literal, it is also figurative. right? In its linking the conscious and the unconscious. The king at first knew Shakuntala carnally as an object, and that is the object of pleasure. She's a flower to smell, a gem to hold, an ornament to wear. She's hardly a person to him. It is only at the close of the play that he sees her as a person and knows her beyond that beautiful physical self.
उसको सही से वो कर दिखाती है, वो तो ये काम चलाऊ कर पाती है।
जो तो भैया है ना कलाकार सबकी
कभी
जगह
कभी 1 महीने 2 महीने में बैठ के बच्चों के
Um, so this is all for today. If there are questions, please type it in the chat box. Um, you can type it in the Q&A session if you have questions. Good afternoon.
ड्राइंग की फिल्म
Ma'am, do we have okay for the study material? It is also available online. It is also you can also you'd be informed by the SOL as and when it would be distributed to you.
हेलो मैम। मैम
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
जब एंड करनी हो तो बता देना।
Yes, sir. Yes.
कर दे कर दे।
Sir, there are a few questions, sir.
क्वेश्चन आप बच्चों से बोलिए ग्रुप में बात कर लेगा।
Okay, okay.
ओके मैम। ओके
Thank
थैंक
you,
यू
sir.
मैम। थैंक यू।